I want to start this deep dive with a single question for you. And I want you to answer it honestly. Yeah. Just in your own head.
Okay, lay it on us.
If fear didn't exist, like if money was absolutely no object, and if no one in your entire life was ever going to judge you for it, what would you truly be doing with your life?
Oh man, that is a heavy question. And usually when you ask someone that, there's this tiny, almost imperceptible pause.
Right, that split-second pause is everything, because in that fraction of a second, the real answer surfaces. It just bubbles up instantly.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe it's painting, or maybe it's farming, or writing, cooking, making music. It's something you probably haven't even said out loud in a decade. But in that one tiny window of time, when that thought appears, that is you. That is your actual authentic life.
But then almost immediately the heavy machinery kicks in.
Exactly. The voice of society just drops like an anvil. You hear things like, that's not practical.
Right. How are you going to pay the rent with that?
You need to settle down first. Or, what will your family say? And just like that, the feeling is crushed. You push it down over and over until it just stays buried.
It's tragic, honestly.
It is. So our mission for today's deep dives is to drag that feeling back up to the surface. We're looking at the ultimate age-old battle, which is society versus passion.
And what really stands out in the research we're examining today is that giving up on our passions isn't just, some personal failing.
We tend to blame ourselves a lot, don't we?
Oh, constantly. We think we just weren't brave enough or we didn't hustle hard enough. But the reality is that this surrender is a systematic feature of how we're raised.
Wow. A systematic feature.
Yeah. So today we're going to break down exactly why we give up so easily, the psychological mechanisms that force us to do it, and most importantly, how to fight back.
I love that. So to understand why we surrender, we really have to examine the environment that builds us. We need to look at what society does to pure potential. The sources describe it almost like a massive algorithmic filter, or actually maybe a better analogy is a psychological bonsai process.
I think the bonsai analogy is incredibly accurate. I mean, when a child is born, they are essentially a wild, sprawling seed of potential.
Right.
They can grow in 100 different directions. But society acts like a bonsai master, clipping a branch here, wiring a limb there, really restricting the roots.
Because the goal isn't to let the tree grow to its massive natural height.
Exactly. The goal is to force it into a tiny, decorative, uniform shape that just fits perfectly on a designated shelf.
That's such a vivid image. And you can see the different stations of this clipping process throughout our lives. It starts really early.
Oh, absolutely.
You enter school, and suddenly learning isn't about wild curiosity anymore. It's about memorization. The mandate just becomes memorize this text, get the highest marks on the test, be the topper, and do not step out of line.
And then you transition to the expectations at home. And the messaging there is usually highly specific and very risk-averse.
Like what?
Like, become a doctor, become an engineer, or, an IAS officer. Get a high-ranking government or corporate job.
Right. And let's not forget the extended family or the relatives. This is where the comparative metrics are really installed in your brain.
Oh, yeah, the dreaded comparisons.
Exactly. Look at Sharmaji's son. Did you see his new salary package?
It's relentless.
It is. And finally, you have the modern addition to the bonsai process, which is social media. You are bombarded with endless curated comparisons of luxury cars, expensive apartments, perfect physiques.
And here's the profound tragedy of this entire 20-year factory shaping process. In this massive, complex societal algorithm, there's absolutely zero budget for passion.
None. Zero. Creativity is actively demoted.
Yeah, if you like art, you're told to keep it as a weekend hobby.
Or if you want to write, you're hit with the classic, what are you going to do, eat words to survive?
Right. And the true cost of this process isn't just that it channels people into specific corporate jobs. The real cost is that it steals our imagination. Think about it. A 5-year-old genuinely believes they can be anything. An astronaut, a master chef, a world-class painter.
Sure.
But by the time that same human being is 25, after 2 decades of being clipped and wired, they are just begging for a generic, stable job.
It's devastating. You're essentially taking a high-tech, intricately designed multi-tool that can do 100 different amazing things and forcefully grinding it down on a whetstone until it's just a basic flathead screwdriver.
That's a great way to put it.
But hold on, I have to push back hard on this.
Go ahead.
Isn't society just trying to protect us from poverty? I mean, if I want to be a poet, that's beautiful, but poetry doesn't pay the rent on day one.
Sure, yeah.
We have biological needs. We need food. We need shelter.
Yeah.
Are we being a little too harsh on the desire for safety? If a parent tells a teenager to get an accounting degree instead of starting a rock band, are they just being responsible?
It's a vital distinction to make, and safety itself is absolutely not the enemy. You need a baseline of survival. The issue is the specific psychological cost of the type of safety society demands.
Okay, what kind of cost?
The cost is a phenomenon we can call shrinking. You aren't just securing a bridge job to pay your bills while you build your passion. You are actively shrinking your identity to fit into a pre-approved box permanently.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you stop seeing the accounting degree as a tool to fund the rock band, and you just become the accountant who completely forgot how to play guitar.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's the permanence of the surrender that's the issue.
Exactly. And to really understand what this shrinking looks like in practice and the sheer emotional toll it takes, we need to look at a real-world example from the case studies in our sources.
Yeah, this part of the research really got to me. There's a story here about a young woman named Priya. She grew up in a very standard middle-class family in Lucknow. Her dad had a secure government job. Her mom managed the home. They were loving, but deeply practical. And since the 8th grade, Priya absolutely loved writing.
But she had to hide it. She would write stories in these secret notebooks because once her mother caught her and scolded her.
Right. Told her to stop wasting time on fairy tales and focus on her math homework.
The bonsai clipping was already correcting her behavior.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So fast forward to college, and Priya starts an anonymous blog. She doesn't tell her friends, she doesn't tell her family, she just writes about life.
Yeah.
The small joys, the daily struggles, real human experiences,
And within a single year, she hits 50,000 regular readers.
which is wild.
It is. That's an incredible metric of success for a solo, unpromoted writer. It proves she had a profound natural talent for connecting with people.
It's huge.
That's
And
fine.
then the massive breakthrough happens, the climax of the movie. A publishing house sends her an email offering her a legitimate book deal.
Wow.
Her hands were literally shaking when she read it. It was the dream she had nurtured in secret for her entire life, suddenly sitting right there in her inbox.
But this is where the crushing reality of society kicks in. She finally tells her family.
And the reaction is brutal. Her dad immediately demands financial guarantees. He asks, how much money exactly will this make? What if the book doesn't sell? You can't rely on this.
Right?
And he pushes her right back toward the steady future of studying for her CA exams.
And her brother chimes in too, questioning if anyone would actually buy a book written by her.
Yeah, and the extended relatives catch wind of it and just dismiss her as a girl with her head in the clouds who needs to get serious about the real world.
So overwhelmed by the pressure, she caves, she deletes the email.
She doesn't even reply. She doesn't try to negotiate. She just deletes it.
That is so hard to hear.
And then 4 years go by. Priya passes her exams. She gets a job at a firm. She has a decent salary. By all societal metrics, she is officially settled and successful.
But the blog
The blog is dead. She hasn't written a word in years.
and the aftermath of that decision is what we really need to focus on.
Yeah, because a friend caught up with her recently, and Priya said something that is just haunting. She said, sometimes at night, I wish I hadn't deleted that email. I wish I had just tried once.
That phrase right there. What if? In Hindi, there's that devastating word, kash, if only.
Yeah.
It is a massive psychological weight. Think about how many lives, how much brilliant potential is entirely consumed by that one concept. We trade our immense potential for a tiny bit of guaranteed safety, and the receipt we get in return is a lifetime of wondering what if.
It makes me so incredibly frustrated at her family. I mean, if my
Yeah.
child got a book deal, I'd be throwing a parade. How
Yes.
could they not see what they were destroying?
It's so easy to be angry at them from the outside. But Priya's family wasn't inventing a new type of pressure. They were acting out a script that is thousands of years old.
Really?
Yeah, they were doing what society told them was right. In fact, you can map her exact hesitation, her exact fear of judgment onto one of the oldest battlefields in human literature.
Wait, you're saying this middle-class family dynamic is an ancient epic?
Absolutely. Let's look at the mythological context from the epic, the Mahabharata.
Okay.
Picture the legendary battlefield of Kurukshetra. You have Arjun, arguably the ultimate, most highly trained warrior of his era, standing in his chariot with the Gandiva bow. And right before the greatest, most consequential battle of his life, he stops.
He just stops.
He literally drops his weapon and refuses to fight.
So he's facing an unbeatable army. Is he scared of dying?
No, not at all. Death is just part of the job for a warrior. He is completely paralyzed by public opinion.
Seriously?
Yeah. He looks at the opposing army, which includes his own relatives and teachers, and he essentially asks, what will people say? If I fight my own blood, my reputation will be ruined. Society will condemn me.
Wow.
The greatest warrior of the age is terrified of societal judgment.
That is exactly what Priya was facing. It wasn't the fear of writing the book itself. It was the fear of the whispering relatives. It was the fear of stepping outside the bounds of what was culturally acceptable for her.
Precisely. And the philosophy that Krishna offers Arjun in response forms the core of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna introduces a concept called swadharma.
Swadharma, what does that translate to?
If I had to explain swadharma simply, think of it like your unique, inherent psychological DNA. It is the specific work, the specific path that you are fundamentally built to do. Your deep passion is your swadharma.
Okay. And what is the opposite of that?
The opposite is paradharma, someone else's path, society's path. Krishna warns that following someone else's path, even if it looks incredibly safe, easy, and culturally approved, is a form of spiritual death.
The spiritual death.
Yeah, the text literally says better to die on your own path than to live on someone else's. You might be physically alive, but your inner drive, your authentic self, just withers away. Doing your own duty, regardless of what society thinks of the results, is the only way to truly live.
So every day, to you listening to this right now, you are standing on your own personal battlefield. You are caught right in the middle between your inherent passion and the loud, demanding voices of society. And just like Arjun, day after day, you put your weapon down to appease the crowd.
It's a profound realization when you see the same psychological pattern playing out over thousands of years.
But let me push back again. Ancient philosophy is beautiful. It makes for great epic poems and, motivational quotes. But it is still philosophy.
Sure.
What happens when we actually try to live this way today? Does the modern world, the actual tangible economy, support this ancient idea of following your inherent duty? Or is it just romantic idealism?
That is exactly where the modern science comes in, and it strongly empirically validates the ancient philosophy.
Really? How so?
We have to look at the work of the Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He dedicated his entire career to studying optimal human experience, and he discovered a specific psychological and neurological state he called the flow state.
Flow. Is that like when professional athletes talk about being in the zone?
Exactly that. But it's not magic. And it's not just a poetic metaphor. It's a highly specific neurochemical mechanism. Flow happens when you hit the perfect intersection between a high level of challenge and a high level of skill.
Okay.
When you enter this state, your brain gets flooded with a cocktail of performance-enhancing neurochemicals.
Yeah.
Dopamine, norepinephrine, anandamide.
So there's a literal physical change in how your brain operates. But why does passion trigger this? Can't I just get into a flow state while filling out a spreadsheet I hate?
No, and that's the key. You have to care deeply about the task to push your skills hard enough to meet that high challenge. When you are engaged in something you are passionate about, your brain does something incredible called transient hypofrontality.
Okay, you're going to have to translate that for me.
Right, so transient means temporary, hypo means slowing down, and frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex.
And what does that part of the brain do?
The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that handles self-doubt, the inner critic, the calculation of time, and most importantly, the part that worries about what the neighbors think.
Yeah.
In a flow state, that part of the brain literally powers down.
Wait, so your biological capacity for societal fear literally shuts off when you're doing what you love?
Precisely. You become entirely immersed in the present moment, and because your brain isn't wasting energy on anxiety or boredom, the output is staggering. The statistical data on this is the ultimate mic drop.
Hit me with it.
Research indicates that people who are working within their area of passion, who are regularly accessing this flow state, are up to 5 times more productive than people doing forced, uninspired labor.
5 times. Let's unpack that math. 5 times more productive. That means if you are doing work you deeply love, just 4 hours of that passion-driven flow state work yields the exact same output as 20 hours of miserable, clock-watching, soul-crushing labor.
That is exactly what the data tells us. The output is exponentially higher when passion is the driver.
Hold on. This flips the entire argument we had earlier.
How so?
Society tells us that giving up our passion for a safe, generic desk job is the practical thing to do. But if passion makes you 5 times more productive, then doing what you love isn't some romantic rebellion. It is mathematically, scientifically, and logically the most practical, economically sound decision you can possibly make.
Exactly.
Which means society's version of being practical is actually highly inefficient.
It is entirely inefficient. Society's algorithmic filter is optimized for compliance, not for peak performance.
Man, if the math says passion is practical and the neuroscience backs it up, why is the career advice we get so phenomenally bad? We have to look at the experts in our lives who hand out this advice.
You mean the self-appointed advisors, the local career counselors?
Right. The tropes of career counseling in our sources are just amazing. Picture this. You just graduated, you're sitting on your couch, and over comes the nosy neighbor, the self-appointed family critic who operates entirely free of charge and completely free of actual qualifications.
We all know the type.
You tell her you want to pursue art. You want to be an illustrator. And her face contorts in sheer horror. She looks at you like you just confessed to a string of bank robberies.
Oh, yeah.
And she drops this incredible logic. She says, drawing is for losers. Go study structural engineering, and then you can draw in AutoCAD on your weekends.
It's completely absurd.
And these-
But it is exactly how the system defends itself. You also have the classic dad's practical friend who drops by.
Oh, that guy.
He sits you down, looks you in the eye, and solemnly explains that the entire universe only contains 3 possible career paths. You can be a doctor, you can be an engineer, or you can be a failure.
He literally lists failure as an industry option.
Right.
It's amazing. And then, of course, they bring out the heavy artillery, the ultimate societal threat. If you take arts, you're going to end up driving a rickshaw for the rest of your life.
Which is such a fascinating cultural fallacy when you really contrast the realities of those 2 lives.
What do you mean?
Let's look at the person driving the rickshaw. He is often his own boss. He sets his own hours. He works outside, talks to a huge variety of people all day, and when he parks at the end of the shift, he's done. He goes home tension-free.
And then look at the practical success story. The corporate middle manager who did everything the bonsai process demanded.
Right.
They wake up in a cold sweat. They hit the snooze button 6 times every single morning because they actively dread going to the job they spent 20 years studying for. They spend all day under artificial fluorescent light, and at night they stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. wondering, is this all there is to life?
So who is really living the practical life? The person producing 5x results in a state of flow, or the person dreading every Monday for 40 years? It's a profound disconnect between what society promises and what it actually delivers.
Let's bring this all together. We've looked at the machinery of the societal bonsai process, how it systematically clips and wires our imagination from the time we're kids. We felt the absolute tragedy of Priya's story, the heavy lingering ghost of what if because she listened to the fear of judgment instead of her own undeniable talent.
We've also explored the ancient blueprint of the battlefield, learning that your passion is your swadharma, your inherent personal duty, and that surrendering it to public opinion is a spiritual defeat.
Yeah.
And we back that up with hard science, proving that the flow state isn't just a good feeling. It is a neurological mechanism for peak human performance.
So following your passion isn't a romantic rebellion. It is the most ruthlessly logical, economically sound decision you can make for your brain's output.
So to you listening, stop deleting your emails, stop hiding your notebooks, stop letting society's terrible, outdated advice rob you of your 5x potential. The world desperately needs what you can do when you are truly alive, not when you are just compliant.
I want to leave you with one final thought to really mull over. We know the math now. Passion equals peak productivity. Imagine if tomorrow's corporations and schools actually realized this.
That would be wild.
What if the society of the future was completely redesigned, not to enforce obedience and conformity, but specifically engineered to systematize the flow state? What if the factory system actually evolved to cultivate passion because it realized it's simply more efficient?
That would be a fundamental paradigm shift in human history.
But until society catches up to that reality, you have to do it yourself. How can you build a tiny secret factory of flow in your own life? What is one small thing you can do this weekend, just for an hour, to reconnect with that thing you used to love?
It starts with small acts of rebellion against the shrinking process.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Remember that question we asked at the very beginning about what you would do if fear and judgment didn't exist. Keep that answer close to you. You are on the battlefield right now. Don't put your bow down today.